Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are the Batman. I'm Mike.
And this is Matthew.
Hey, if you're listening to this episode right now, that means we ran out of ideas, or we got busy and had a week where we just we did not have time or the opportunity or whatever the case might be to record a fresh new episode. So what we've decided to do is we're going to start doing some Batman DC adjacent movie breakdowns, just to have. So that way you never miss a chance to listen to our lovely voices talk about things.
Yes. Due to something that I messed up on, is
Yeah.
I had a wedding during the week, and I didn't have the mind to tell Mike, like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to record until Friday morning. And he was like, that's a great story. I cannot record Friday mornings.
Cannot record Friday morning. And it was one of those where we had gone so long constantly doing weekly episodes because stuff was always happening or going down. And we had a couple episodes in the can, and then we used it finally to give ourselves a break. And then we never re-upped on our canned episodes. So this is just one of several. We're making a point to make sure we put a bunch of these in the can to have. But still keeping it on topic. It might not always be a Batman focused episode, but it will be on topic to say the least.
DC adjacent.
Yeah. And so we figured, look, we're doing a whole damn show about Batman stuff. We got to talk about Superman at some point.
Yeah.
So doing a dive, not a super hour-long deep dive, but a dive nonetheless into the first real serious attempt, I think, like genuinely serious, legitimate cinematic attempt at a superhero movie in Dick Donner's 1978 Superman the movie, starring Christopher Reeve, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Margot Kidder. There's no better place to do that with. I watched this last night because I realized that it had been a few years since I had last seen it, and Matt, where do you sit with this movie?
I think this I think you have to put it in the same kind of genre, same space as the 66 Batman. Mm-hmm. It is the Superman of that time. And even though Christopher Reeve's performance in this movie in particular and is amazing, it still holds up. Everything else around that is dated as hell. Yeah. And it looks like now, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this morning, is like watching the movie. Like I watched it, my wife and I intentionally watched it probably like 5 years ago. And I remember going like, this movie looks like a movie made now as a period piece. That's what it feels like. Because the weird thing about it is like, we take computers for granted. Because especially you, because you're like 10, 15 years younger than me, like you grew up with a computer being in the house. That happens as I'm in my early 20s.
I also grew up with a graphic designer of a mother, so that's another reason why there was a computer in our house.
Well, even as my dad was a computer programmer, so I technically had computers all my life, but it wasn't as an appliance like it is now. You know, and now, of course, we've kind of transitioned away from it with smartphones and tablets. But my point is like you watch this movie, it's from 1978. And like you would never go to a newsroom and there's not a computer on every desk. There's typewriters. No one has a cell phone. No one has this.
I worked at a news station for 8 years up until last year. Like there was the computers everywhere.
Yeah.
When the pandemic hit and it was time to send everybody home, it was like, oh shit, now what? So yeah, like literally the computers everywhere in a newsroom is 100% true.
Yeah, but then when you look at this movie, it's like no, so I think that there's definitely elements. It looks like a period piece movie now, but at the time it was current. So I think, but I do think like the Lex Luthor Gene Hackman is playing is the Lex Luthor of the 70s mad scientist Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
The businessman Lex Luthor doesn't happen till like the mid to late 80s.
Yeah. You mean like I don't mean this to be political, but it wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s that Lex Luthor became an accidental Trump metaphor. Like that was completely by accident. But it's one of those things. Now you look back on it now, and it's like now when people see these takes on Lex Luthor, their first thought is, "Are they trying to do a parody?" It was like, no, that's just kind of how it's been done. That was by accident. But yeah, up until then, yeah, Lex Luthor was, to quote Gene Hackman in this movie, the greatest criminal mind of the century, which is one of the most 70s lines of dialogue.
Yes.
Like, that is straight out of a goddamn comic book. And bless Gene Hackman, he is doing this version of Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is already one of my least favorite villains. Like, and that's why this is a weird thing for me to talk about. Lex Luthor is one of my least favorite supervillains, and I am not particularly a big Superman fan.
Yes.
I know that for a lot of people, he is everything they need him to be. And it's just never been that for me. I've always had a hard time relating to Superman. It's not until you get into the late 90s, early 2000s, even before you get to like Henry Cavill's Superman. Henry Cavill's Superman was the first time I watched Superman. I was kind of like, oh, hell yeah. Like, this is because he was flawed. Up until now, particularly with the Christopher Reeve version, Superman is perfect.
Yeah.
He's a perfect human being, or not human being, but he's a perfect specimen. So, so that's a little tough for me to reconcile, especially watching this movie last night like I did. It's like trying to approach this movie from a purely filmmaking standpoint. Man, they did a good job. It really feels like a legitimate attempt. This is not them making something just for kids, which is what 60s Batman was. It's like, yes. No, we're trying to make a movie that just happens to be about Superman. That being said, I don't need 7 minutes of credits at the beginning of this movie. Because at one point, I found myself playing on my phone because the credits were still going on.
Dude, that's what the movies were like back then. They were all like that.
I know they were. But back then, the credits took a while because there was a lot of names to list. This one took a while because there were a lot of names to list, and every name got 30 seconds of graphics and all that coming in. And it's like, okay, not everybody needs their own star swipe, guys. Like, we can just block text this thing. We got, guys, it's a 2.5 hour movie. We've spent 10 minutes on the credits. Like,
look, this is before digital editing, so they couldn't cut down the John Williams score to be a 3-minute thing.
Well, then you just say, hey, John, John, little shorter.
Hey, I'm not going to say I've watched the credits in the entirety in the last 30 years, but
it was one of those. I at one point I considered like maybe I should just skip through these, but it was. I was just sitting on the couch. I was like, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm sitting here eating dinner. This gives me time to eat. I finished my dinner before the credits were over, guys. So anyway, that was my biggest gripe watching it last night. I was like, because it was the same gripe. I love Andor. I love the Andor series on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. Long intro's too damn long.
Gotcha.
Too goddamn long.
Gotcha.
It was like a 45-second intro of like just the logo. So it was kind of my same complaint with this. I was like, guys, come on. Also, Star Wars had come out at this point. Put the credits at the end. Come on.
Yeah, we could swoop a year before. Yeah. No, like. Do we want to go into performances? How you want to do? You want me to? Because I have one thing.
That's really where. Because I don't want to rip this movie a new one. Because ultimately, I enjoyed the movie. It's not a bad movie. Like that sounds like I hate this movie. No, this movie's very good. It's very good. But the part of what makes it so good is because everybody who's in it is bringing 110% with what they've got as a script, and the script isn't bad. It's just dated as hell.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like this is it's kind of like RoboCop. Like RoboCop was cool as crap in '86, but you watch it now, you're like, this is not the future.
I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah. But no, I think that with this movie, like, you're right. Every performance is outstanding. Like, look, Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve have incredible chemistry. It is totally obvious she is in love with him and he's in love with her. Is she an attractive woman? Not particularly. Like, there's
not by our standards anyway.
No, but I'm just saying, like, I've never thought she was an attractive woman, even when I was younger. But I mean, I'm not knocking her. Like, she's not ugly, but I'm just saying, like, there's a look at this of like what
Well, I was gonna say, like, Lois Lane is always portrayed as like a fucking bombshell knockout, like can charm her way into any room. And Margot Kidder, they were going for performance. It was for like in performing the role of Lois Lane, Margot Kidder knocks it out of the
Oh,
park.
yes.
It's the conversation everybody has about like Gal Gadot and Wonder Woman of like, did she physically represent what we think of when it comes to Wonder Woman? Not particularly. Did she nail what they were going for tonally though? 1,000%.
Maybe, but
Shut up.
but no, you are correct. Is that there's because even Christopher Reeve, like, it's kind of weird. Like, he's more in shape than I can remember him being, but he's not swole Henry Cavill or swole Brandon Routh. Like,
No, we still haven't reached that generation of film.
yeah, so he's in much better shape because there's like, if you watch the director's cut of this movie, there's a scene of him in the suit when he's like at the beginning of production, and you can tell how lean and small he is, and it looks borderline ridiculous that he's in the suit.
Yeah.
But no, I think his performance alone elevates it. And I will say this, and this leaks into some future movie things that we were going to say. I think oftentimes when it comes to casting actors in roles like this that are going to be franchises, we say somebody's definitive, but it's just because they were the first.
Yeah, you hear that a lot with like when people talk about Sean Connery as James Bond
or
like,
Michael Keaton.
Oh, he's the definitive James Bond.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton's Batman. It's like, no, they were good.
Yeah,
they just did it first.
But I think Christopher Reeve is definitive.
1,000%.
Like
Christopher Reeves, like he did. It wasn't just he was like the OG. I mean, he wasn't the first, but he's kind of. It's like Adam West. He wasn't the first one to play him, but he was the first one to play him seriously, and he sets the tone.
Oh yeah, the fact that this is like one of his first gigs is insane.
Mm-hmm.
That either he was very easily molded by them, or he just was dialed in so much. Like, dude, that whole like he's hunched. Like, I know I'm doing it for you because you can see, but he's hunched over and he does that like, you know, Lois, I really think we should hurry up. But by the way, I think I have to tell you something.
Yeah, his separation of the characters is it's nuts. It because the same thing has to be said about like whoever plays Batman. Is you've got to be able to separate the characters of Batman, Playboy Bruce Wayne, and real Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And with Superman, Clark Kent and Superman, like how does it work with him just putting on glasses? It's not just about putting on glasses.
Yeah.
It's about separating these two personas as much as possible.
Yeah. And I thought it was cool. Like even later on, because the thing of it is like he's Superman through and through. The fact that she saves him knowing that he'll tell the truth and you believe that he will do what he says, even though it's going against what he wants to do. And then I think my other favorite moment is when like Luther tells what is this? Otis, take his cape. And he goes over and he just looks at him and you're like Superman's about to throw you to the moon. Don't touch
him. Walk away, Ned Beatty. Walk away. Just walk away. And
it's not like an over aggressive, moody, like, it's just this like, nah, bro. No.
It's one of my favorite from Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett when Timothy Oliphant is playing the Marshal Cobb and people go to pull their gun on him and he just pulls his first and goes, think it through.
Yeah.
Think it through.
Yeah.
Think about what you're about to do.
Yeah. It's such a great, because you rarely see him be angry or that way. Like you see him destroyed at the end when things happen and he has to alter reality. But
Lois dies, guys.
Yeah.
This movie was made in 78.
It's almost 50 years old. What am I doing? I'm sorry. But I just love that moment of like, you just have that thing of like I'm a nice guy, but I'm going to kill you if you touch me.
I'm not saying I will, but I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. like it. Christopher Reeve was I hate saying was because I know he's gone, but he just this was like his other than like a couple of small TV roles, this was like his this was his breakout role. He had done one other movie before this, and like he just got it.
Yeah,
he understood the assignment.
Yeah.
And when he finally, after he when he's first Superman in costume and he saves Lois in the helicopter, and he just kind of goes around Metropolis, just kind of like, you know, making some statements.
Yeah.
That is my favorite sequence in the movie, I think, is when he's first Superman and he goes, stops the jewel thief, stops the guy stealing the boat, gets the kitten out of the tree, saves Lois in the helicopter. That's my favorite moment in the movie because that whole sequence, he's so dialed in to being Superman.
Yeah.
Immediately followed up with everybody in Perry White's office, and he's just being timid little Clark. Yeah. But I love the moment when Perry is like, I want everything about him. I want to know who his favorite ball team is. And Clark's about to speak up and answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's that whole because you're juxtaposing his performance as Superman with immediately seeing him back as being mild-mannered Clark Kent, and it baffles me how well he was able to craft two separate characters and play them both as two separate people.
Yeah. No, Lois, I really think you should give him your purse. Catches bullet, acts like he faints.
Oh, man, it's so good. We mentioned in another episode that we did that the idea for a good Superman is you got to have a good smile. Chris Reeve's got a hell of a smile. Oh, yeah. He's got a smile that'll charm the pants off anybody. He's so great. I was reading online, he was picked from over 200 actors.
Yes.
Out of 200 actors.
If you want a fascinating journey, if you get the Superman DVD, the flip side of the DVD, that's how much is in there, is like a 2-hour documentary about them making the movie. And half of it is about casting Superman.
It's wild.
That they went through everybody, and Richard Donner talks about like they screen tested him, and that they did that scene where they're doing the interview for the newspaper, and he's standing on the little wall, and he jumps down and does, "Good evening, Miss Lane," and just starts talking to her. And and Richard Donner said the moment he said that, he looked at the guys, he's like, "We got him. Like, I don't need anything else at this point." And they let him do it, and they were like, "Yep, you're him. This is it."
Like, that scene's a little hard to watch because the dialogue is extremely dated in that scene. but the exchange itself, like the back and forth between Chris Reeve and Margot Kidder is so good, and it feels natural. Again, it's cheesy and dated as hell.
Yeah.
But they're selling it in such a way, like when she gives him crap early in the movie for saying, "Well, gee, that sounds swell." She's like, "Nobody talks like that anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, even in 78, saying that was super cheesy." But also, he just does such a good job of selling the cheesiness that comes with being Clark Kent. That you can't help but buy it.
Oh, that the one part that always cracks me up, that's kind of like, whoa, is when she's like, "What color are my panties?" And he's like, "Oh, I can't see through this is lead." And then she walks up, he's like, "Pink. They're pink."
Your mic is buzzing.
How about now?
Okay, now you're good.
Okay. That part where she's like, "Can you see, what color are my panties?" And she says he has X-ray vision, and he's like, "I can't see this because it's lead." And then she walks away, and he's like, "Pink. They're pink." And you're like,
yeah.
That's kind of, it's not bad, but it's like one of those things where you watch that now and go like, "Settle down there, bro. I know she asked you."
Yeah. Because even like I said, I watched it last night, and that whole scene, I was just kind of like, so dumb.
Now, as fantastic as that all is, the part where they fly away and all the weird stuff, that's kind of weird. But
also, I really got to give this movie credit, like, because this is still before like CGI was really a thing. Everything was like green screens and really clever editing.
Yeah.
And when I say green screens, I don't mean like today where you're in like a giant room that's green. It's like no, it was literally like a green sheet that somebody held up,
or
and you
back shot.
back shots and matte paintings. Like this movie's, I hate to use the term special effects, but just the way the movie magic, let's call it that, the movie magic, particularly with him as Superman, is like mwah. Like it's incredible watching it now. And again, I'm talking. I live in a world where I have seen a movie where they've digitally de-aged Michael Douglas in the first Ant-Man to where I was like, how did they do that? Like, I've seen Thanos look real on a movie screen. And yet something about seeing this movie and how well they executed the fantastical elements of a Superman movie in 1978 with just film editing is insane to me.
There's two things I'll say about that. Number one, I remember when I watched Superman Returns. What is the one with Brandon Routh called? Is this Return?
Superman Returns.
And I remember thinking, like, it's 20 years later and the flying doesn't look any better.
Yeah.
But then two, there's this, all right, do you like everything in Kansas is mind blowing because it's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
It's all on location.
Now, so here's one. This was also from that documentary. It's insane. Do you remember the funeral scene when his father's died? And him and his mom are talking, and there's that church behind them on the hill.
Yeah.
Richard Donner tells a story that their location shouting. They've got the funeral, and there's this church down the hill. And he's like, I love that church. I really wish we could have it in the shot. And the production designer and the DP goes like, yeah, there's no way. And the production designer's like, that church is like, yeah. They come back the next day. The guy rebuilt the church as a 12-foot tall model.
Oh, wow.
So that church behind them in that scene is a model that's 12 feet tall.
Oh,
perspective to look like
it's, they did forced perspective.
Yeah.
That's so good. Because they do that in Elf, in the Will Ferrell Elf movie.
Yeah.
When he's with the elves, and he's all huge and all that, like almost none of that CGI.
Yeah.
It's forced perspective.
Yeah, same with the Lord of the Rings stuff too, a lot of times.
Yeah. They weren't actually that short, guys.
But it's interesting to think about, like, we could do that stuff. If you have somebody who's good enough at building that. Now, I would do that and it would be like a Lego castle. But
yes.
But I mean, just some of the things that they did, it's like, I think to talk about the CG, I think we so much lean into, well, we'll just digitally do it. Yeah. Man, if you just have somebody who knows what they're doing, we're
every post-production guys, the one thing they never like to hear, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
Shut up. Yeah. Shut up. Stop saying that.
I remember, we may need to cut this out, but I remember when I was doing indie film and we were talking about doing a superhero movie. And I was like, dude, I think we can do the Star Wars thing to make people fly. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, look, if you look at the original Star Wars, all they had is they had a model on a thing, and the camera would fly by the model. And then they would put the background in later. So we did tests, me and this other actress and the guy, and like, it's like, all right, we put a green screen up, and then we like laid down on the table, and I would just like hold the camera, and then I would walk toward them and go, hey, lean to your right. So as I bring the camera in, then I would move the camera, lean to your left. So like you could make somebody weave through buildings, or like, hey, look at the camera. I'm going to fly towards you with the camera. And I remember when we're doing it, and that dude is like, this is stupid. Like, this is so stupid. Like 2 months later, he messaged me. He's like, dude, you're on something. He's like, I found that footage. I started playing with it, and yeah, we could do this. I was like, well, yeah, no shit, you can do
back then you had to.
They did that in Star Wars. Like, that's how that stuff worked.
Because that's how you had to do it back then.
Yeah.
But that's also where things like, the LED volume stage that a lot of folks use nowadays comes into play. Like when you watch the Batman, a lot of that car chase sequence was shot on the volume set. That's honestly such a, people look at it like it's a step forward in technology. I view it as, no, we're just kind of repurposing old techniques with new tech. That's kind of how they used to do it. Was they would have them be in the model car or whatever and have, you know, the matte painting on a wheel rolling, and they would turn it. And then we got into a world of like, yeah, it was them, and then we would just CGI everything. No, we're back to kind of revisiting old techniques because it looks more real.
Yeah.
Because they're actually doing it now.
Yeah. The volume is a living matte painting.
It is. You know, when you want to shoot something at golden hour, now you can have it be perpetually golden hour.
Yes.
And you can mold it however you need it to be. And a lot, and that, to take that back to this movie, you know, that's what they were doing in the 70s with just less tech. They were like, this is what we want it to do.
Yeah.
How do we make it do it?
Yeah. And the charm of it, the charm of like, look at Christopher Reeve talk to somebody and then in the same shot, fly away.
When he drops off the jewel thief with the cop, after he pulls him off the window, he flies away. And I remember, again, I think I went back and rewound a couple times last night. I was just kind of like, that's really good.
Yeah.
Because especially when you start looking at the sequels to this movie where they phone it in hard.
Yeah, there's a couple of those that just
like it's Superman 3, where every time he flies, it's just the same shot of him flying at the camera over and over and over again.
Hey, here's one. You didn't even notice it. There's a one take, and Christopher Reeves in both. It's at the end of the interview. He's dropped her off. She's on the patio. He flies away. She turns, opens a door, and there's Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent.
Oh yeah, I did notice that.
So
yeah.
it's a back shot on a wall. That stuff, and he's always in behind the door as Clark Kent. But it's like you can't tell because they did such a great job.
It's very good because you had to.
Well, and you don't think about it because I told Ryan, I was like, "Hey, look at this," and she's like, "Oh, wait a minute." How did they do that? Like, yeah, he didn't fly off and run around the stage and dress into Clark Kent real quick. It's a back shot. It's just insane some of the crap they were able to do.
Well, that's why with some of the shots when you go to Star Wars, which was the year before, when Obi-Wan is facing down Vader and he turns his lightsaber on, and I've noticed this since I was a kid, there's a cut right there.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't perfected the lightsaber tech yet. So there's a hard cut whenever he turns his lightsaber. In the first Star Wars, anytime someone turns on a lightsaber, which is all 3 times in that movie, there's always a hard cut because they hadn't figured out quite the method for the lightsabers yet.
Yeah, that first Star Wars movie is hard to watch in HD and Blu-ray.
Well, which is crazy because like with this one, you know, I watched it on Max, and like, you know, this is the updated remastered version. This movie looks good in HD. This movie looks very good in HD.
There's like 2 or 3 shots that you're like, yeah, that's a backlit shot. Like you can kind of tell. But I mean, it is what it is. But for the most part, they did everything practical. So it's just insane. So between performances, practical effects, extremely well casted, extremely well directed, this movie, I think, like again, you have to understand what it is. The Lex Luthor thing is kind of weird, but
even that, again, Gene Hackman is working with what he's got. He has got to play the quintessential 70s criminal mastermind. It's not the deepest of roles. It's pretty on the nose. You know, you're super smart. You're just evil for the sake of being evil. Got a bumbling sidekick. Ned Beatty is wonderful as Otis. Don't change a thing. And again, he's working with what he's got. Now, I will say this. I don't know if you're familiar with the How It Should Have Ended cartoons on YouTube.
Yes.
How It Should Have Ended, Superman the movie, is pretty spectacular. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the first ones they did. And it does... I couldn't help but live with that in my head while watching the ending of this movie, which is just, you know, that's right, 2 missiles Even you with your great speed could not catch both. Boom, boom. Oh, you mean these two missiles?
Are these the ones?
These ones right here? I flew around the world a few times and I couldn't find any other giant missiles, so I guess you just meant these ones here. And
yes.
It's especially because it ends with him in the cafe with Batman, and it's the superhero cafe that How It Should Have Ended does is seriously
outstanding.
So then what'd you do? Oh, I made sure Otis went to jail and made out with Lois Lane for a bit. Flew into the space, smiled for the camera, winked, and panned off screen.
Yeah. How else would you end a Superman movie?
Exactly. But you know what Batman would have done? He'd have thrown a batarang at him.
Yeah.
But then how would you stop the missiles? I just got a bat missile stopping gadget on my utility belt. That's what I do. It's some of the best videos on the internet.
Yes,
guys.
I love those. I love those to death.
It's so good. Yeah, Gene Hackman. Look, he's working with what he's got. Is what he got to work with the best thing in the world? No, it's 70s Lex Luthor. 70s Lex Luthor kind of sucked. It was not a good villain. It was what it was. But Gene Hackman sells it.
Yeah,
he again he is given 110% in this movie. And this is Gene Hackman, who at this point he had done the French Connection at this point, right?
French Connection in the early 70s.
Early 70s, yeah, he had done that. He, obviously, he had done Never Sang for My Father. He had done Bonnie and Clyde. Like this is Gene Hackman. Like there's a reason Gene Hackman's name is going to go down in film history. Because by this point he had already picked up Oscar nominations and wins. So he's like, yeah, this is silly. I'm gonna make it as believably silly as possible.
Yeah.
And I can't knock, like, everything in this movie is as good as it can be. It's a very good movie. It's just of its time.
Yes.
And once you can set that aside, even if you're not particularly a Superman fan, kind of like the way I am, I still had a good time watching this movie.
It's incredible. It really is. It hits you in the feels when it needs to hit you in the feels.
Yeah. Just skip the credits.
Yeah. Fast forward through the credits.
Just fast forward to the 7 minutes of credits. That's all.
And I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it to you, but I really feel like Miss Tessmacher is the template for Harley Quinn.
Oh, I would bet money that Bruce Timm was in some way inspired by Miss Tessmacher for Harley Quinn.
Same hairdo, same look, same kind of thing. So yeah, I've always like, wait a minute, is Miss Tessmacher Harley Quinn for Lex?
Eve Tessmacher is one of those characters who just kind of she shows up in the Arrowverse stuff.
See, but she didn't. I don't believe she exists in the comics. She's from the movie.
That is a good question. Actually, I'm googling it up here. No, she was in the comics.
Was she?
Well, okay, to the back. Her first appearance was in the movie. Yeah, that's correct. Her first appearance. She's one of those characters who becomes comics book canon after her appearance. Because she's in Superman Returns. It's it's a different character, but it's basically the same thing with Parker Posey. In Superman Returns. But yeah, she shows up in Smallville at one point. She shows up in Supergirl, the Arrowverse show.
Yeah.
So it's a character that stood, but yeah, I would be shocked as hell if they didn't pull some inspiration for Harley Quinn from Tessmacher, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, Superman the movie. It's a good movie. It's on HBO Max. Go watch it. If you're like me and maybe you haven't watched it in a long time because you're just like, whatever. Give it another look. There's a reason that people, but also, and we didn't really talk about it much, but just to give it some acknowledgement, John Williams' score, man. That John Williams Superman theme is it's good. It's John Williams, so of course it's good.
The entire music of this film is just outstanding across the board.
To me, this movie's got such good music, but again, it's John Williams, so of course it does. And as I'm looking here right now, I mentioned like the editing being so good. It's Stuart Baird who edited it. Which, if you don't know who Stuart Baird is, watch some Star Trek. He's worked on Star Trek. Like, some of the best editing out there has been done by Stuart Baird. Like, he is a standard. This movie's very good. So, like I said, if whether or not you're a Superman fan, if you're just a DC fan, a comic book property fan, put yourself in the mindset of this was made in the 70s. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
You might surprise yourself.
And here's my last kind of comment on this film. I also believe that Chris Evans watched this movie and went, "That's how I should play Captain America."
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That's not, to me, that's if he didn't, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Is what, yeah, it's very evident. Because Superman and Captain America are two characters that were kind of cut from the same cloth. They were kind of introduced as sort of not propaganda, but they were both introduced in a time where American patriotism was high and anti-Nazism was even higher. And they were there, some of their earliest adventures are these, Captain America especially, are there fighting Nazis.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely, yeah, there's a reason this movie has the legacy that it does. So take some time over the weekend and watch this sucker. See what you guys think. Speaking of someone who is not a big Superman fan, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. And it reaffirmed for me, oh yeah, that's why people still talk about this movie.
Yeah,
I get it.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely get it. So that's what we think. We always want to hear what you guys think. You can let us know by heading over to our website, podpage.com/wearethebatman. You can also let us know on Twitter @wearethebatman. You can find me on Twitter @Mr. Mike Shea.
Find me on Twitter @Mr. J Ninja.
We will see you guys. We won't see you, but we'll talk to you guys again next time on a new episode of We Are the Batman. Same bat time, same bat podcast channel.
Bye-bye.